Welcome home. We are WNST AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are celebrating 25 years of doing this crazy AM radio station thing, but almost 33 years now on the radio and 40 years of media. Our 25th anniversary video comes out, and a documentary telling the whole story about how we all got together. That's going to happen on Thursday at 5:08 p.m. And as John Stedman would say, you're a young old timer if you understand what 5:08 in the p.m. would represent on Thursday night before the NFL draft. We're going to talk draft in this segment. I'm wearing my Curio purple here. I got rid of the orange and black, even though it's cool to have orange and black, and we'll all be cool on Friday and Saturday and Sunday as the Orioles come home to take on the AAA Sacramento, not long for Oakland, but headed to Las Vegas Athletics formerly of Charlie Finley. The first team I ever hated, by the way, as a kid, the Oakland A's. They come to town this weekend. We're going to be at Fadley's on Friday. Luke and I will have the Pac-Man scratch-offs between 2 and 5. We'll be live there. Also have some other guests coming later on. I'm hoping to go to the ballpark on Friday night. Luke's going to be covering the draft Thursday, draft Friday, draft Saturday. If you're on the WNST tech service, you'll get everything first as it all happens. And on Wednesday, if you're not hearing this after Wednesday, we'll be at Greenmount Station and Greenmount Bowl watching the Orioles and the Angels happen in the afternoon at 4 o'clock. I'll be at Greenmount Bowl from 2 until 4. We're going to be talking a lot of horse racing with Dave Richardson, Dundalk guy who is invested in 10 pins and duck pins. You know that problem you have up in Pennsylvania, Luke, where, duck pin bowling is so last century. We still have some duck pin bowling. Because my wife said, he better have duck pins. I'm like, it's in Maryland. He's a Dundalk guy. They'll have duck pins. So I don't know if my back's going to allow me to do that. Thank God for Curio giving me this move to get my back where it's got to be, and Planet Fitness for hooking me up. But Lucas, how are you? It is in the old days, like you would watch the baseball games and nobody else watched them, and the team was usually like 7-11 by now, or maybe 5-14 or something like that. And the draft would be all we would be talking about. We'd be having prospects, suspects, ex-coaches, ex-scouts, all this stuff. But the Ravens were really good. Hosted the AFC Championship game and ran the ball, well, more times than Jackson Holiday has hits for now. But they draft 30th, and that's so late Thursday night, and the Orioles don't even play on Thursday night. So I would say beginning Thursday morning, purple will hit the brain of everybody. But the Orioles have been a beautiful, wonderful diversion here the last month.
Yeah, I mean, no question about it. And that's okay. As I say to you, and I say this more as in a big picture sense as a sports fan, not even speaking as a Ravens reporter or an Orioles reporter per se, it's okay to have seasons. It's okay for something to go away for a little while. And, it's been as quiet can be at any point for the NFL. But specifically, once we get to the end of free agency, the third, final week of August, or March, I should say, and then we get into April, the draft nuts have been focused on the draft, and that's great. And there's still plenty of oxygen for that in those circles. But to your point, when you are picking 30th, there is a little more of a wait and see what's going to happen exactly. I've even going back to when we were in Orlando for the owners meetings, being told at that point in time, look out for the Ravens potentially trading back, from someone in high places whose value I really, or whose opinion I really value. So we're just going to have to wait and see how it plays out. I think it's evident, so obvious, and I'm working on this at BaltimorePositive.com right now. It's offensive line, first and foremost. I mean, when you have 3 openings on your offensive line, even if 1 or 2 of those spots gets filled with internal options, you need a piece there, whether it's going to be 30th, whether it's going to be 62nd in the second round, whether it's going to be the 93rd overall pick, whether it's a couple of those picks devoted to offensive linemen. I think that's, by and large, the overwhelming sentiment is this team needs to add a couple impact offensive linemen. So I think that's the big challenge right now, because when you're picking 30th, yeah, there could be a Ben Grubbs there. There could be a Todd Heap kind of talent there. But it could be Matt Elam. It could be, and I don't say this to lump him with Matt Elam, but Adafe Owe, it's a little more of a question mark, So when you're picking 30th, one, there's so much variance that you don't know how it's going to play out. You might have Eric DeCosta probably has, I'd say, a list of 5 or 6 guys right now that he feels pretty confident that one of them is going to be there at 30. but you have quarterbacks. You have a lot of quarterbacks that could go in this first round, so that impacts things. And again, when you're talking about O-line, in a perfect world, we've talked about some of the names, and you know, okay, there's probably a Jordan Morgan that's going to be there, but is Amarius Mims going to be there? You look at some of the other names, Tyler Guyton, for example. It's like that, probably a good chance they're going to be long gone by the time the Ravens pick. So there's plenty of excitement, and there will be this week. To your point, Thursday, the Orioles are off, so it'll be all Ravens, and there'll be plenty of enthusiasm. But it also could be a long night where you wait till 30th, and then they trade out, and then you're waiting till Friday night. So, it's one of those drafts, and I think especially for a team that is at the point where they are with their salary cap and with some of the big contracts headlined by Lamar Jackson, I think Eric DeCosta is going to value more picks. So whether it's going to be the first round or whether it's going to be later on in the draft, I'm definitely anticipating a couple trades that they're going to be able to accumulate some more picks. But to try to drill down to thinking it's going to be one player that's there for them at 30, that's really difficult to do when you have 29 other picks that are going to come off the board between now and then.
Well, then I think it makes it more natural that we're not talking as much about it. And when you talk about haves and have-nots, and we talked a lot of baseball here this week, and I'm going to have Susan Fornoff on, long time. She got her start in Baltimore. She's really one of the forerunners of women journalists, even before Molly Dunham, whom I worked with 40 years ago, who covered baseball. She's infamous for the Dave Kingman rat episode. She was that reporter 40 years ago, and she's been associated with the Oakland A's for a long, long time, and Baltimore. She grew up in Baltimore, being an Oriole fan back in the 60s and 70s. So she's going to be a great, great guest to talk to this week. So I'm looking forward to that. But the idea that when you're really good, and we sit here and nitpick, but these bad teams have nothing. You talk about the Chicago White Sox; they have no talent. We see these teams that come through here with no players, no future, any of that. The Ravens are the exact opposite of that with the Roquan Smiths and Lamar Jackson. We could sit here and talk about Kyle Hamilton. You're talking about paying players, Linderbaum. They have great players. Now we're just talking about filling holes, little holes, but big holes if they're the offensive line, and you start to decimate that. You got King Henry now. He's going to run the ball. It looks like everybody was kumbaya in the building last week. I saw you wrote, no news is good news, but it has really been as quiet a month from a Ravens perspective, but it's really because of the din of the noise of the baseball team. That's sort of we only have 24 hours in a day, right? And the Ravens, to your point, I said, hey, we do some Ravens this week. Well, they haven't done much. No. And that's sort of by design because they don't have much to do, because they were they were the best team in the AFC until they weren't the last 10 minutes of the season last year.
Well, I mean, they do have a lot to do, though. I mean, the offensive line, I agree with you everywhere else. You can look at, and we even did that when we were at Fadley's a couple weeks ago, where I had the updated depth chart in the mind of Jones, which isn't worth much, right? It's not Eric DeCosta or John Harbaugh, of course, but you kind of go down the list. Quarterback, all right, we could debate about backup quarterback, but you're fine. Running back, again, I think they're going to add a running back at some point during the draft, but you have Derrick Henry. You gave Derrick Henry big money to come in and be the guy. You have Ricard, tight end, they're covered, right? I mean, okay, they could use a blocking tight end, in a big picture sense, maybe from a long-term planning standpoint, but they're covered there. Wide receiver, could they add? Yeah, no question about it. But you have Zay Flowers. You're hoping Rashad Bateman finally pops. You did re-sign Nelson Aguilar. I think you absolutely would like to add a wide receiver, but is that critical for them? Probably not.
They're not taking a wide receiver with 30, is what you're telling me, unless they have a guy that might be 16.
Right. I mean, they're going to draft best player available that fits a need. I mean, we know that that's a team that there are a lot of things that you could maybe question, but they're going to take the best player available. That's not like a quarterback.
Hold on, even if it doesn't fit a need. They took a safety 2 years ago, and we're all like, what?
Correct. and he's one of the best players in football now. I mean, with Kyle Hamilton. So, but is that scenario going to even present itself? We'll see. That's why I said offensive line is so fascinating, because you're at a point in the draft where you're going to have guys that are certainly attractive, but I think they're guys that are beauty is in the eye of the beholder. For example, you look at someone like Jordan Morgan, right? Now, there's probably a decent chance, and again, I haven't been obsessive in covering the draft this year because I've been focused on baseball. But also, when you're picking 30th, there's a lot more unknown. There are a lot more moving parts. But someone like Jordan Morgan, who could be there at 30, but the question is, okay, is he an offensive tackle at the next level? Or, as you've seen some pundits whose opinions I value, they've kind of questioned, okay, could he be a guy like Marshall Yanda where, okay, he can play tackle, but he could be a stud at guard? I think where the Ravens are picking, I think that's where you're going to have a really interesting crossroads with some of the prospects that are going to be there, where you say, okay, is this guy more of a right tackle? Is this a guy that might be able to play left tackle, but he's better suited at right tackle? Is there a guy that, okay, probably can stay at right tackle and play right tackle like Marshall Yanda did at a couple points in his career, but he's got a chance to be a Pro Bowl guard? So I think that's where the Ravens are going to be. They're going to have prospects, first round and probably the second round, guys that are kind of in that category where I think it's going to be interesting because you're looking for long-term upside, long-term potential when you're talking about the draft. You're not just drafting for 2024. We know that. At the same time, they have some very real 2024 needs on their offensive line. So I think that's where it is really interesting for them. That said, I also be remiss if I completely ignored the fact that they could use some depth and some long-term options at corner when you consider Marlon Humphrey, big year for him coming off of an injury-plagued season, and Brandon Stevens going into a contract year. Who are your outside corners behind those two guys? Right now, it's a whole lot of Jalen Armour Davis types where, okay, maybe you liked them at one point, but they haven't developed. So you have corner, you have wide receivers. So edge rusher is still there, even though Kyle Van Noy being re-signed certainly helps you, at least in terms of 2024. And you're counting on young guys to pop, hoping a David Ajabo or Owe taking the next step even. So you have other positions. So it's not as though I'm going to sit here and say they're definitely taking an offensive lineman. But when you're looking at this roster on either side of the ball, it's glaring that they need offensive linemen. So that's where you look at this and say, okay, who exactly is going to be available? And, how do you view that guy? Do you view a Jordan Morgan where you say, okay, he could be a right tackle, but, he probably is better suited as a guard, So, I mean,
They've made
that's
it
just
work
what we're
with
talking
Patrick
about.
McCary for a long, long time. I mean, like
They have. No,
yeah.
and that's valuable. However, Patrick McCary, you don't want him to be a starter, right? I mean, I
You're
think that's
not
evident at this
aiming
point.
for Patrick McCary in this draft, but if you draft 3 offensive linemen, maybe 4, through this, you would say, all right, I need one of these guys to start, one of these guys to swing through. And that's about as good as you're going to get. I mean, I don't think you're getting Marshall Yanda and Ben Grubbs in a draft again. Maybe you are, but they did that once. I have pictures of me sitting with them.
Right. You certainly can't expect that, right? But that's where it's challenging. I mean, really the model, and not obviously it's a different position, but can you find a Tyler Linderbaum? And what I mean by that is not necessarily that you're drafting a guy that's going to be a Pro Bowler, but a guy that you can plug and play on day one. And Linderbaum as a rookie, no, okay, he had a couple tough games as a rookie, but by and large, he was an above average player from day one, right? I mean, that's basically what he was. Is there a guy that's going to be there when you pick 30th, or if you trade back and you're picking 37th, and I'm just saying that off the top of my head, that you can plug and play? Is there going to be a plug and play guy? Because that's where, for me, I really am uneasy if you don't come away with that in this draft. I think you can sell me on Ben Cleveland playing right guard. Okay. You can sell me on
picking up a scrap heap guy.
Voorhees playing left guard, because John Simpson was a scrap heap guy last year, so, but all 3 spots internally, or, just kind of scrap heap or acquiring a veteran in training camp, that leaves me uneasy. To me, that's where, I think at 30th, you're really hoping that you can find a guy that
you want the offense to be functional. You better have the offensive line be functional.
And that's my big thing.
Yeah.
everything else is in place, right? And including now, even if you and I had difference of opinion about how much of a need it was, they've got the running back in place. Now, you'd like to add another guy because, Keaton Mitchell's not going to be available until October, November,
Dude, this
December,
time
whatever it
last year, they're
is.
trading Lamar for the Colts' first pick, right? Like literally,
Oh,
they
of course.
couldn't fit.
Oh, they're in so much
We've
better.
yeah, they've
Yeah.
come a long way.
This is small potatoes compared to that. That's understood, and that was part of what I wrote last week. I mean, but it's not small potatoes that you have to figure out your offensive line, because let's also keep in mind who are the two givens on this offensive line right now. Okay, Tyler Linderbaum, Pro Bowl, All Pro caliber center. You feel great about him for at least the next 2 years after this one, and hopefully hoping you extend him. But the other given is Ronnie Stanley at left tackle. Let that marinate for a moment. That's the other given, the guy that you just cut his pay and tore up the last year of his deal because he was a compensation concern. So they have three clear question marks in terms of openings, but that's also considering long-term planning purposes for Ronnie Stanley and someone to step in at left tackle potentially as early as next year. And knowing how Ronnie Stanley's been at some point this year, potentially, although you still have Patrick McCary in that regard. So the point is not to be an alarmist because, yeah, this roster overall, I still feel excellent about, but I don't feel excellent about the offensive line right now. So that's where it is important that I think that Eric DeCosta got to find another Linderbaum. And what I mean by that is just a guy that you draft and say, he's going to be a starter for us. And, maybe it's a guy that might be a starter where you say, okay, he's either going to play right tackle or he's going to play left guard. I mean, we've talked about those different scenarios and kind of scrimmaged all those different possibilities. But, that's where I am with this draft. Every other position, they're drafting for depth, and certainly their depth took a hit with the free agents that departed. That was always going to happen, and there isn't a team in football that isn't going to look at their roster come week 1 or week 10 and not be holding their breath at certain spots. That's just the nature of the salary cap, right? I mean, you're going to have attrition. So the Ravens endured plenty of that during free agency. That was not unexpected, and it's not something to crush them over. That was always going to happen that way. But you do look at the O line, and it's unsettling right now. It is, and if it's not, then we're completely doing a 180 because all I heard for the last few years was how important the O line was in protecting Lamar Jackson. So you've had a lot of change here, and look, the Ravens might have been smart. Kevin Zeitler might not be the same player in Detroit. And Morgan Moses was dealing with an injury last year and might not be as good with the Jets. So I'm not even saying those individual decisions were wrong. The point is you have to replace these guys. And, we've seen in the
They have a
past that
plan. Their plan is to go draft good football players this weekend. That's their plan.
you have to hope that the board falls the way you need it to, right? And you need guys that you feel good about your evaluation that you hit, that they're that good. I mean, we were talking about it. Lots of people were talking about it when they drafted Tyler Linderbaum. We spent the next week and a half talking about the fact that they had not invested at the center position in so long. You had to go back to Matt Burke in terms of either drafting guys or signing guys. It had always been later round picks or, someone like Ryan Jensen, or Matt Skrull was a rookie free agent, or it was, a veteran like a Jeremy Zuta that you would sign for modest money. I mean, they hadn't invested there. And then before you know it, they're drafting Tyler Linderbaum. They're trading Marquise Brown to draft Tyler Linderbaum. And 2 years into it, it's looked really, really good because Linderbaum's already been to a Pro Bowl and looks like he's going to be one of the best 3 or 4 centers in football for the next decade. So,
well, to your point, whatever we say on Friday morning or Saturday morning or Monday morning of next week, whatever our report cards are for their drafts and all that, the Linderbaum thing, I like that pick. I remember liking that because if they're going to take a center, they've done their homework and they feel like they got a guy. The Kyle Hamilton thing, I really gave them the benefit of the doubt because they didn't need a safety and they had just spent a bunch of money on a safety. And I said they must have a plan. So there is a sense of, with them in general, much better than as a media member asking them questions as to whether they're going to be truthful as to things as to like whether I'm a real media member or not. But when it comes to football evaluation for them, whatever weirdness happens, like it won't be hard for you and I after all of these years. And Eric DeCosta is widely featured in our 25th anniversary because he was a part of this for a long time. or participated in it, I should say. I would say whatever we say, if they deal back, it's because they didn't like anything at 30, right? If they deal up somehow, which ain't happening, we'll know, right? And if they pick a player there and they make the pick, turn the card in, as Eric would always say, um, then they'll have some conviction about that player being the guy you're talking about and not being Travis Taylor or Matt Elam or Sergio Kindle and being Tyler Linderbaum or Kyle Hamilton, but maybe not Ray Lewis or Ed Reed, but maybe Todd Heap. Like we can do
Yeah.
that at 30. We can find a player that we have 15th on our board, feel like we got great value, even if it is I don't know, a left tackle or, I don't, I mean, even if it's a place where they already have a player, but it can't be a running back. It won't, there's things to me it won't be because that won't be where their critical need is. And to your point, if you had a lot of people whispering at you down in Orlando a couple of weeks ago, especially people that you trust in the current state of things that say they would move back, I wouldn't be shocked at all if they don't make a pick on Thursday night.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there should be any surprise, especially, I mean, if the board gets picked of the safer, better offensive line prospects and the guys that you're looking at are guys that you feel could still be there if you move back 12 spots, right?
Well, they
I
were
mean,
that team with Lamar to get that quarterback, to get that
exactly.
player.
And
And
that
once you get
scenario,
into that pocket and that hole where you get an extra year, but more than that, moving from 30 to 37 and getting something next year and still getting a guard if that's what you're fancying. There will be guards available at 37, 47, 57. They're really good at this.
yeah.
And they were really good even getting Dobbins and getting Ray Rice and picking they've been bad at wide receivers. We've been, but their offense, I always ask the question, how much do they really want to pass? And you tell me what a great passing team they are. I don't know that every wide receiver in college football is looking forward to playing with Lamar or in this particular offense or Todd Monken. I think they'd rather, go for the bomb like Bobby Brady. But I would say there are a limited amount of options here, but I will not be the guy urinating upon whatever they do Thursday night because they're thinking about it a lot and they're really good at this. And it needs to be pointed out, despite my their lack of character, lack of integrity, lack of courage, lack of communication, lack of decency. They're good at picking football players.
They are. And look, I mean, I think there's a middle ground here also in recognizing that they have had some years in the Lamar Jackson era where the offensive line has been an issue, though. They did not do enough to replace Marshall Yanda. And look, this doesn't mean when Marshall Yanda rides off into the sunset that you're expected to plug and play a Hall of Famer. Let's be clear about that. But that position was an issue for them the following year. They did not do enough coming off of the Ronnie Stanley ankle surgery the first time around. Alejandro Villanueva was woefully unprepared to step into that role the way that the Ravens needed to. And it was a problem for them. So, they don't bat 1,000 when it comes to that, but your general point as far as picking players, yes, of course. But that's where I am a little uneasy looking at the offensive line right now and so you got to fill 3 spots, and that's with working under the assumption that Ben Cleveland's going to work out, assuming he's going to be the right guard. And that's the widely held assumption. That's assuming that, maybe an Andrew Voorhees does work out, or the guy they brought in that was with Houston, Josh Jones, might be their left guard. But, as it stands right now, if they're lining up and playing today, the offensive line, I have legitimate concerns about right now. And that my point with the draft is, generally speaking, and why the Ravens have been as successful as they've been, they are typically not in this position too often where you go into the draft and you must draft a starter at a certain spot in round 1. Now, plenty of those guys end up being drafted and then they take over for someone else. They upgrade someone else. But when you look at where they are O-line wise, if you're lining up today, Stanley at left tackle, Linderbaum at center, I assume Ben Cleveland at right guard. I think Patrick McCary would be the right tackle, although Faalele will get an opportunity. And then left guard, it's either Big Sala, Andrew Voorhees, or Josh Jones. I mean, boy, that's a lot of ifs.
That's a lot of
I just
questions
laid
there.
out there.
That looks like the Riddler's outfit.
That's why I said if you can come away with a plug and play guy at number 30. And the scary part here is we don't know if they actually are going to or not, right? I mean, even Tyler Linderbaum, until we saw him play, you don't know 100%. There was a point in time when this organization was over the moon about drafting Matt Elam, for example, and we saw how that turned out. So you never really know. And that's why I always laugh at grading drafts immediately after they happen, because it's just like, well, it's either you like the player, you as a draft pundit or you as a fan like the prospects that they drafted, or you didn't like them. That, but no one really knows. But that's where, but you do look at the rest of the depth chart, the rest of the roster, where you look at the starters and you say, okay, and wide receiver, we can debate Rashad Bateman, whether he's going to finally break out or not, and we can debate some other spots, and edge rushers certainly where you're doing a lot of projecting with Owe and Ajabo and Malik Ham and a couple other guys, but you at least have Van Noy that you brought back there. But O-line right now, it's a lot of shrugging going on there. And that's not to be disrespectful to some of the incumbents that they have that I expect to be in the mix, but it, it's not just as simple as saying, "Oh, we're going younger, cheaper, better than Kevin Zeitler, or younger, cheaper, better than Morgan Moses." You know, I mean, those are two guys that started a lot of games for you the last couple of years. And Kevin Zeitler played at a Pro Bowl level didn't get recognized for it all 3 years, but he played at a really high level. So, that's a pretty high bar to clear. So it doesn't mean they won't. It doesn't mean they won't figure it out. I'm not sitting here saying that the Ravens are doomed with their O-line, far from it, but I'd be disingenuous if I just looked at what they have right now and say, uh, yeah, they better hit on, and not say they better hit on a legit guy that you can plug and play. And 30, it can be done, but that's where I go back to. It is one of those, beauty is the eye of the beholder, because you are going to be talking about guys that, are those fringe, are they a right tackle, or are they a guard? Are they a right tackle or a left tackle? So, you're not going to get a perfectly clean, awesome prospect at 30. Now, that player might turn out to be awesome, but as a prospect, he's not going to profile. He's going to profile as having some question marks, some warts, some unknown to him, and that's okay. And that doesn't mean that Joe D'Alessandris and the coaching staff won't be able to develop a couple guys. But again, as it stands for this team and its championship aspirations, which they still very much have, anyone who is arguing otherwise is putting way too much stock into the guys that they lost this offseason. They lost some valuable depth pieces. They lost a couple starters, no doubt, but this is still a heck of a football team. But the offensive line is the one area where it makes me take some pause, and that's where you're hoping that a good football player gets to them at 30, that they can just take that guy, and whether he's going to become a multi-time Pro Bowl player or whether he's just a plug and play starter that you just feel really good about, at least for the next 4 or 5 years. That to me is, they can do that, then I don't even have to know what happens with the rest of their draft to feel pretty good about where they are as a football team post 2024 draft.
I'm doing some house cleaning around here this week with our 25th anniversary, and I found all my old wrestling pictures from ringside, so I want to show those to you. I have a whole bunch of Ric Flair, Ronnie Garvin. I found my Harley Race and my Hulk Hogan's and my Ted DiBiase's and Larry Zbyszko, so I'm going to be all about that. I think Brad Baluchin's coming on this week, who lives in Oakland. He's a professor out there, wrote the Wax Pack of the baseball story. He's done one on wrestling now, so I'm going to be looking forward to having him on. Also, I guess in the house cleaning department here is Mike Rosenfeld, our chief digital officer. You hear him here from Web Connection. You find him out at Baltimore Positive. Also, a shout out to Jessica Vallis from Hartford Designs, who keeps our website running. We're going to have an all-new website in about 2 weeks, in addition to the documentary. I've been working. I've been paddling like a duck underwater as an entrepreneur the last 90 days here, since before a cup of Super Bowl, and I got banned from going to the real Super Bowl by Chad Steele and the Ravens. We're working hard here to do a lot of different things. The draft thing, Mike has a part of his business, Mike Rosenfeld, out in Detroit. And he has left early this week. I was going to have him on. We were going to do a segment. He's not here. His kid lives in Detroit. They're going out there. They're going to drink beer. They're going to hoot and holler. They're going to yell at the draft. I went to one draft in 1996 when John Ogden was drafted. He gave me the hat off his head, and Eddie Carroll was there. By the way, my Oiler affinity? I haven't found the King Henry Oiler jersey to wear, the 22, but I found this for sale on eBay. It was $350. I'm not buying it. It was the Houston Oiler helmet from the 1992 draft on the table. Remember how they used to have the helmets with the phone on it when you call in
Mm-hmm.
the bat phone to make Steve McNair your pick? Well, so in 1996, it was still that way. And the Ravens didn't have a logo. So their helmet just had like Baltimore Ravens in black and silver and white on it. All the other tables had like a Jets helmet and a Lions helmet and all that stuff. So I only went to one. And that day, we were the official broadcast partner at WLG 1996, April 19th, 1996. And we did the party at the Sheraton, and Spiro Maurikis hosted it, and I was on site in New York. And there was no flagship, there was no 1300 or LIF or any of that stuff like that. Dave Carberry will remember all this. So that day I went up there and John Ogden got drafted. And remember, the Ravens had that second pick and everybody wanted Leland McElroy and whatever. They wind up taking Ray Lewis. He's not there. His friend had been murdered that week. Like the whole deal, the team didn't even have a logo. I keep going back to that. Ozzie was the general manager and he wasn't qualified because he was Art's buddy and Art was trying to save the team. And like Art was kicking the dog, all this awful stuff that was going on. And after that draft, I never went back to New York. I could have gone anytime I wanted for 20 years, sat with Mel Kiper and watched him do his hair in the bathroom and like all that stuff. I never ever went back because it wasn't all that good. And we're trying to get the thing here. And I know you have some sourpuss. When I brought it up, you're like, I wouldn't go to, I'm with my draft books. And I've got all my draft books with LeVar Arrington on the cover sitting in the back, right?
Mm-hmm.
From back in the day. I should kid Lamar about that. Get him, LeVar, get him on the show one day. He's a good dude. Penn Stater, you're one of your people up there. Drink the good dairy people up there. The draft, one day it'll be here, right? I mean, right? I mean, you talked to Sashi and he told you, so it must be true, right?
I mean, I think where you're seeing this going with the draft now that it's been at so many different venues, including not exactly the most, but what you would think is warm weather venues. And it's late, it's late April. The weather's not as much of a concern on that front. Although tell the people in Denver that this past weekend where they had snow at Coors Field. But I think it's inevitable. I don't think it's necessarily imminent. I think it's probably going to be a few more years, just based on planning purposes. But it's become, I think it's a nice compromise for the cities that are not going to get a Super Bowl. And any city that's not building a brand new stadium and in a nice location that's a destination. And, obviously Minneapolis had one a few years back, and, New York happened a little over a decade ago, but I think that was a very unique circumstance from the league's perspective. So, this is Baltimore's opportunity. Much like we've talked about the All-Star game for, going on a decade plus now in terms of Camden Yards getting another All-Star game, which I'm hoping that's going to happen at some point now in the not too distant future, post Camden Yards renovations. So I think it's going to happen. But yeah, just from a fan standpoint, it's an opportunity to have a party. It's an opportunity to gather. It's great for the city. It's great for the community. None of those points am I against, obviously, but I just find, an event like the draft where if you really are enjoying the actual football aspect of it, attending it, that's something that has zero appeal to me, right? I mean, if I'm someone that is into, Dane Brugler with the Athletic, he's got his huge draft guide, and Pro Football Focus has their draft guide, and Mel Kiper, and go down the list of Daniel Jeremiah, all these people who do phenomenal draft work, right? Over the last 3 months, they're household names as it pertains to fans. If it's someone that is really into all that, the last thing I'd want to do is to go somewhere where I don't know how cell service is going to be. I'm not going to have my laptop. I can't pull up the player profiles for the guys the Ravens are drafting. So that's just me personally. But in terms of a party, in terms of thinking back to what Baltimore missed out on back in 2013, yeah, that'd be great.
Well, we
But
talk so much about the baseball stadium getting renovated and the football stadium getting renovated and how much of our money they're spending to make more money for themselves that by the time the All-Star game gets here on the baseball side, and by the time the draft gets here, we're going to be 2-3 mayors down the line, 2030, whatever, wherever we're going to be. And crime, the city, the Inner Harbor, Baltimore Peninsula, I will never call it that. Poor Covington. The bridge,
Sure.
right? I mean, holy hell, the red line. I mean, we got all of these real serious Baltimore positive. I talk about them every day. I talked to Sheila Dixon last week and Shannon Snead. I'll have Theroux on. I'll have all these people on the next couple of weeks before the election that what our city can become. And I got a little feisty with you in the Orioles segment about, well, the Orioles could never have 3.6 million. I don't want to think like that. I want to think about like, what could it be? What could the World Series, 3 World Series down the line? Maybe they can be that. Maybe they have two more AFC championship games here and they win two of them and win 3 Super Bowls. And 6 years from now, we have an Inner Harbor that's built with whatever they're going to build down there and whatever's going to be there. And the bridge will be up and have been up for 4 years at that point. And, Mike Elias will be going to the Hall of Fame and so will Adley. Like, that's not crazy to dream that, but it's going to take my money, your brother-in-law's money. Is going to have to get the hell out of Philadelphia and come down here and raise your nieces and nephews right, and make them Baltimore Oriole fans and Baltimore Ravens fans, and the city and Baltimore and downtown and the harbor and the water and the science center and the Daddy, I want to go to the aquarium and I want to see the Orioles play. And that was 30 years ago. I lived through it. It can happen again. But all of these dreams we have when we see, dude, Detroit's got the draft. Detroit.
Yeah.
Dude, Detroit was on fire, dude, in my lifetime, not long ago. Like the time they had the Super Bowl there 15, 18 years ago now in 2006. It wasn't like worthy of that. And you know what I mean? But now it is. Stadiums are built. They've had things. They've fixed some things. They've gentrified. They've done all of this stuff that they're going to have. I mean, how many people are going to be downtown Detroit? I mean, I tell you what, when Schwartz got the job, so we're going back 15 years, and they still hadn't won anything. They're the Lions. They were owing $1 billion at that point, right? He gave me the whole like tutorial on the Detroit media thing. We were sitting down at his place in Eastern Shore. The Red Wings had won cups. The Tigers are the Tigers. And the pizza company and like all of that with those two companies. The Pistons had bad boys and had fallen in hard times and playing out. And the Lions are the biggest brand of all the brands in Detroit by far. Even though they're awful. You saw that their fans came in here and bought tickets for $300 when they finally got good. The one time they've been good this last year, and now they're good. Man, they couldn't have hit this any better for it to be an inferno in Detroit, I would think. I mean, for what we would want to see 10 years from now here, if we get all of these things. Marty Conway told me over the weekend, there's some city that has Philadelphia in 26, because of the bicentennial, a sesquicentennial that happened in 76, Spirit of 76, 26, 50 years, 250th anniversary of the country, all that. They're going to have the MLS All-Star Game, the baseball All-Star Game, NBA, and like they have like all the All-Star games in 26 in Philadelphia because they've lined it up. You know what it takes to line that up? Mayors, governors, civic, like all, it's really hard to do, but we're in a position where rebuilding the city, and you being a little younger than me, you may live long enough. By the time you're 50, might feel a whole lot different around here for the complexes, the city, and it won't seem far-fetched about all-star games like it did as long as Angelos owned the team. They were never getting an all-star game here, right? And then you have to fix the stadiums and do all of these things. The money's there, the initiative, the federal money's coming for the bridge. Like, we have a real opportunity that when we show it off, maybe we'll smell as good as Detroit will smell this week. That's my dream.
Yeah, yeah. And look, I mean, the point I was trying to make about the NFL draft, it feels like that's going to become much more of a every city can get that at some point
It's
in
a
time.
Super Bowl you can have.
Yeah, right, exactly. Whereas the Super Bowl is not that, right? Unless you have built a brand new stadium and you are in a location that's considered vibrant in the middle of, or not even the middle of January anymore, the end of January, early February, because no one wants to go and be in the cold, right? So that's a very limited pool that they're going to draw from. But the draft can be that, and we know Camden Yards has been a completely fine, capable, perfect place for an all-star game to return to for a long time. We know why that's been the way it is, because of Angelos and the Masson dispute. I mean, I think that's evident. we're going to see Camden Yards have, at this point now, I think it makes sense to wait until after the renovations are done. I think that's kind of logical at this point. And probably ownership would, David Rubenstein would probably prefer it that way. So you're going to see that. And with the draft, I mean, it's not like a new stadium is a requisite to get the draft. I think we've seen that play out, that's not the case whatsoever. Just a matter of where you're going to hold it. And that's where I think the Inner Harbor, the reimagining, redeveloping of that's going to be so interesting, and see
Or the
where all
parking
that
lot in
fits.
front of the football stadium
Yeah,
and
wherever
using
it's
the
going to be.
baseball
Right. I mean,
stadium for the
wherever it's going to
overage.
be.
Like the whole complex, they could open the baseball stadium and the football stadium on draft night,
Sure.
and there might be 180,000 people that would come downtown. It'd be the biggest night in the history of the city. And I think for Rosenfeld to run out to Detroit, and you're like, and I'm like, I don't want to go with you. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I saw it in Philly.
And
To my point, I saw it in a theater in New York 28 years ago and
yeah,
didn't think it was like anything I wanted to do. As even when I drank and chased girls and did all that kind of fun stuff, I am a nerd. I mean, I used to
it's
throw draft parties where everybody would say, shut up. Shh. Mel's talking. Shh. I got to
right.
hear what's going
Exactly.
on, you know?
And what we're laying out here are our personal preferences, in the same way that I couldn't tell you how many Thursday night games on Amazon last season that I didn't even turn on. And I actually have, well, my brother has an Amazon subscription.
Well,
I
I
didn't
have a
turn them on
borrowed
because it's a lousy
subscription.
product, but people will watch it, right? And that's why the NFL, that's why they're king. Even substandard, and I'm not saying hosting the draft is a substandard thing. I think it'd be great. I think it'd be a lot of fun for people who just want to party, right? And go and see the Ravens, announce their first round pick, and everyone goes nuts and have concerts and all the different things they didn't get to have back in 13, because of the circumstances of that. So, I think it really is a great opportunity. And what I mentioned was my individual personal preference. But do I want Baltimore to get a draft? Do I want Baltimore to have the All-Star game? I'd love to. I've covered an All-Star game in Miami. I'd love to cover one at Camden Yards. So these are things that absolutely feel like it's a matter of when and not if at this point, in either case. But to your point, there's some work that needs to be done between now and then, and that's a multi-pronged attack right there. Not just the Orioles, not just the Ravens, not just the current fan base, not just current politicians in office now, but also ones that are going to be cycling through. There's a lot of work to be done, but a lot of opportunity and a lot of exciting things that the city can host here in the coming years.
Yeah, I've known you 15 years, and I still have all my pictures in boxes. I've digitized most of my stuff, but like I don't have one picture of you and me that's not digital, right? Like nothing printed. I went through all my pictures. I found this picture of D. Snyder that I took on the Stay Hungry tour. So I'm chasing down D. Snyder, trying to get him on before M3. But I've been going through these pictures, and like 25th anniversary, the video comes out on Thursday night in conjunction with the draft. I figure you got nothing else to do on Thursday night except watch drunk people in Detroit, judge Mel Kiper's haircut, waiting on DeCosta to either deal the pick or make the pick at 10:30 at night. We are releasing No One Listens, Everyone Hears. We even have a cover for the book now. It's a fun cover, or cover for the movie. It's a picture from a phone booth in Germany that I took doing live radio on WNST from a phone booth with a pink phone, everything written in German, and I'm in a Team USA jersey and some really, really puffy shorts and a Raven hat. So go check that out. No One Listens, Everyone Hears. It is released at 5:08 p.m. for all you Free the Birds folks out there. That'll happen on Thursday night before the draft. Luke will be covering the draft. Luke's covering baseball. I'm covering baseball. We're together. Angels, A's in town. We're going to be at Fadley's on Friday, eating crab cakes, shrimp salad in my case, maybe some mac and cheese. We'll have Pac-Man scratch-offs to give away on Friday down at Lexington Market from 2 until 5. Also, we're going to be at Greenmount Bowl from 2 until 4 in Hampstead on Wednesday, and then I'm moving over at 4 o'clock to Greenmount Station, having a proper crab cake, probably some ribs and some French fries as well, maybe a little Greek salad as well. I'm taking some dessert home to my wife as well. That is Wednesday afternoon at 4 o'clock. The Orioles take on the Angels. All of it brought to you by our friends at the Maryland Lottery in conjunction with Liberty Pure Solutions and clean water. Very, very important if you have a well, especially. Cannot recommend Doug and his team enough on that, as well as our friends at Jiffy Lube Multi-Care. We've been talking about them for a long time and shall continue to have that and these wise conversations. Big appreciation to Bill Cole. I've got my Cole Roofing mug up with my Royal Farms poured in. I'm out of it. Well, I got one sip left. Hold on here. All right, good day. Now I'm ready for all sorts of action around. I'm like Pedro Morales, ready for any kind of action. The film comes out, and I want to thank Gina Schock, Keith Brewer, John Allen, Mike Brillhart, Mickey Coachella, Ray Bachman, and Bill Cole, and especially Greg Landry from Towson Transfers and Blue Rock Productions for really making the thing something I'm proud of, something that I hope anybody that's participated in anything that we've ever done makes you proud of working with us, because I think we have an interesting story to tell here. And certainly, much like the Orioles or much like the Ravens offensive line, we're not done building. He is Luke. He is Baltimore Luke. You can find him anywhere the internet is served. If you're on our text service, which we brag about in No One Listens, Everyone Hears, you will get those texts when the picks are made. And if there's any other breaking news, please get some hits, Jackson Holiday. I'm tired of talking about it. I am Nestor. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore positive. And Holiday, celebrate.